Hey, this is Christy Mickelson, and I've had a few people recently request that I talk about butterfly symbolism. So today we're going to talk about the spiritual meaning of butterfly. And I think probably everybody is aware that butterfly, one of the major meanings of butterfly is that of transformation. And so I'm going to spend quite a lot of time probably in this audio talking about transformation and that aspect of the butterfly. There are other aspects of butterfly. For one thing, messenger is one. In Japan, I think some other cultures as well, they're seen as kind of a messenger from the beyond. Sometimes they're seen as the souls of the deceased come back, and usually that's a very positive thing. You know, it's not a scary ghost kind of thing. It's like the butterfly is just a way that the past souls are able to come back and just touch onto our lives and let us know that they're okay. All right. Well, I'll go a little bit probably towards the end into some of the shadow meanings, because every spirit animal has shadow meanings as well. That there may be some of the characteristics that are, things that we can work on. But primarily, I'm going to look at the transformational aspect of butterfly. So butterfly, it can really connote almost any kind of transformation or change, just change in your life, but specifically is very, very pertinent to the idea of spiritual transformation. So we'll talk about that a lot. All right, so in terms of transformation, the reason it's associated with that is that it's got this distinct life cycle. All insects go through life cycles. They go through different stages, and some of them go through 3 stages, but a butterfly goes through the full 4 stages. It's called complete metamorphosis. Starting out as an egg, and then it goes to the caterpillar or larval stage, and from there to the pupal stage, which in the butterfly is the chrysalis. If you're talking a moth, which is very closely related to the butterfly, would be actually a cocoon. So those two terms are actually 2 different animals, but they're so closely related that a lot of what pertains to butterfly will also pertain to moth. Okay, so we've got egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, and then the full-fledged adult butterfly, which is usually most of the time when we're talking about the butterfly power animal. Butterflies come to our life, we're thinking about the adult butterfly, but we have to remember that that's only one part of their whole life cycle. And before I delve deeper into that transformation, I think it's significant that numbers sometimes come up with power animals, and it's good to pay attention to those when they do. So we have the 4 stages of the transformation of the butterfly, and you see the number 4 come up a lot in spiritual and metaphysical symbolism, as well as it comes up in the natural world. So we're looking at things like the 4 directions, the medicine wheel, right? The 4 elements, the 4 seasons, the 4 phases of the moon, all sorts of 4s. If you look into different religions, a lot of them have things coming in groups of 4. So it's a very significant number. In numerology, I'm not a numerologist, but, just very briefly, 4 stands, amongst other things, for stability and order. And it's, if you think of a square with its 4 corners, very, very solid, very stable, solid foundations, like a building. Most buildings will have a square or rectangular foundation. And so 4, the square, is kind of unshakable. Oh, and also 4 is also said to resonate at the frequency of the archangels. Okay, so very spiritual number 4. So you might be wondering if, there's all this stability and order, and then we look at the butterfly, and it's a creature that's so changeful and ethereal and flitting from here to there. How does butterfly really relate to the number 4, which is like this solid chunk, stable? But remember that the butterflies are primarily looking at spiritual transformation, spiritual awakening, enlightenment. So in light of that, it really makes a lot of sense to associate with the number 4 because there's a message there. Because spiritual transformation doesn't just happen. It requires a solid foundation, okay? A solid foundation of discipline, solid foundation of, some of the spiritual principles in place before the shift to awakening, to enlightenment happens, and a devotion to the work. So enlightenment isn't just something that just happens. It does require discipline. It's a work. So with butterflies coming in for you, and especially if you're aware of an awakening process happening, one of the things that it can be telling you is just a reminder. Think about, this is a process that does require work, and it does require one to buckle down, pay attention to the path you're on, become diligent about living a life of purpose. So one thing that it could be telling you is, hey, this magical thing. I mean, once you go through this transformational process, this awakening, there's a lot of magic on the other side. Butterfly is all about magic. I mean, just look at this incredible, like, piece of art, the living piece of art that just kind of flashes into your consciousness, flashes into your visual field, sometimes just out of nowhere. It's a very magical creature. So it's coming in, telling you, there's this magic and you're on your way, but it's not always easy. In fact, it's, I don't think, ever easy, really, the journey to awakenings. But conversely, if you are going through a hard time, if you've been struggling, the butterfly can come in as a promise of, yes, there is joy on the other side when you get through this process. It's very similar to the rainbow, that idea, and the butterfly does have those rainbow colors associated with it. So with that said, let's take a little bit closer look at the butterfly's life stages, because they can tell us a little bit about this journey. Okay, so we're going to start with the egg. And I don't know that I'm going to go too deeply into the egg phase at this time, except to say that before the awakening process happens, we tend to be pretty just sort of unconscious. And I think that's partly what the egg kind of symbolizes, is just the state of unconsciousness. But it's also a state of potential. And there are a lot of people floating around who are in this state, and usually it's going to take lifetimes, to work through this state. There's development happening on the inside. It takes about, it's typically 3 to 7 days for a butterfly egg before it is ready to hatch into a caterpillar. And even though it looks like there's nothing happening on the outside, inside there are all sorts of changes happening. There's a lot of development. So, when we look at people, and, a lot of times a great place to find these is just looking at the political office. And I'm poking fun here, because there's a lot of actually very, very compassionate and awakened people in office. But there's also ones that we like to make fun of that really aren't. We can see these people and the way that the thought happens or doesn't happen, within them. But I think there's also, what butterfly can teach us is some compassion, okay, for people at different stages along the way, because we all start there, and every butterfly begins as an egg, without the beautiful colors, without the ability to fly, is just sitting there. And is a butterfly better than a butterfly egg? You can't get the butterfly without the egg. You can't get the butterfly without the little worm stage, the caterpillar. So having compassion with people wherever they are on their journey, recognizing that we're all on different phases of the journey, different stages, and we may be further along than some and not as far along as others, and to recognize that we're all human beings, no matter where we are on our stage, and no matter how, because if you're a butterfly just sitting there as an egg, it seems like kind of ridiculous behavior, right? But put in the context, just have compassion for people wherever they are. All right, so a little bit more about the egg, is that butterflies always lay their eggs on the specific plants that provide the right nourishment for that particular species caterpillars. So, for example, the monarch is going to lay her eggs on milkweed, and those little white cabbage butterflies, they're always going to lay their eggs on cabbage family plants. So you're never going to get a monarch laying her eggs on a cabbage. There's a reason that they lay their eggs there, and there's a reason that, the message here is it's an indication that you are where you are. You came from where you came from for good reason, in that spiritually you were given the exact perfect environment to learn the life lessons that you need to learn. Okay, so it's an invitation to be grateful, to express gratitude for our origins, for where we came from, for our parents, for, our upbringing, for the place where we grew up, even if you've experienced it as harsh or difficult. And some people have come into the world under very, very difficult circumstances. And if that is you, then it's an invitation to recognize that you were given this as a gift, and it may not feel like a gift, may not at all, but really those experiences are there to bring you lessons, that your soul needs to learn. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, or that, it's not a punishment. It's this is the game that you've been born into, and that you wouldn't have been put there if you didn't have what it takes to rise above it. Okay, so just a recognition that it's unfolding in the right way, at the right time, in the right place, and there's a reason for everything. Okay, so the butterfly egg hatches into the caterpillar or larval stage. Its main job is to eat, and it eats and eats and eats, and not only to eat, but to grow. Okay, so it's not uncommon for a caterpillar to grow 100 times its size in a few short weeks. That's huge. All right, so this pertains to the stage where we start to awaken, and it's a really interesting stage, because it's like the awareness kind of comes and goes, and there's a lot of growth happening, but it's like, and we can feel that we're moving, we can feel that things are shifting and changing, but we're not flying yet. Okay, so this is a stage that is actually pretty challenging, and caterpillars go through a lot of, in addition to growth, they have to molt their skin, because they're growing so fast. They actually split their skin. Okay, so they'll do this 4 or 5 times, as they grow, and just it's sort of an indicator of, in this period of awakening, there's gonna be challenges. Like, you're gonna split your skin, and you're also gonna be consuming a lot. Okay, so along the way, you're going to be consuming a lot of information. You're going to be given a lot of help. Okay, you're being fed. So just keep your eyes open for, all the abundance that is there for you. Remember that the egg was laid on the correct plant. So wherever you are, whatever your situation, look around you, and you're going to find both the lessons and the nourishment that you need. Okay, there's a lot of help, there's a lot of support, as well as challenges, but there will be challenges. And rather than seeing them as challenges, just recognize these are lessons, they're tests. Okay, and they're tests not to punish you, but to help you along. Just like when we go to school and we have tests, and sometimes those tests feel so punishing, to stay up late all night studying or whatever it is, but they're not meant to punish. They're meant to help us to grow and to learn and to become the people that we're going to eventually be as adults. All right, so I'm going to look at a little bit of the shadow side of caterpillar. They're consuming. Okay, so caterpillars coming into your life. First of all, just looking at the journey part of it, yeah, you're going to consume a lot. Sometimes it's going to seem like overwhelming what comes at you, all right? And other times there may be times where in your process of awakening that there may be some destruction happening, okay? Because caterpillars, because they eat, they're actually destroying, and that's the whole. If you're familiar with the Hindu god Shiva, he's the destroyer, but he's also kind of a creator. And the idea is that sometimes destruction has to happen. Sometimes we have to break down in order to create. And we're going to see that again in the chrysalis, big time, okay? But it's starting to come into play with the caterpillar, is that there's going to be some disillusion. Well, I guess disillusion as far as getting rid of illusion or falseness, and that's what you're doing. But dissolution in terms of things breaking down, things breaking apart. And you might experience, a lot of people experience a lot of this, things breaking down, things breaking apart in their lives. And looking again at the molting when the caterpillar is shedding its skin, you may go through different transformations and multiple. And you may think, oh, okay, now is the time where I'm really going to sprout my wings and fly, and then you end up crashing and burning. And it's really, really easy to get discouraged during those times. But consider that you're in this period of amazing growth, amazing growth. And if you're in this stage, you know you've got a purpose, you know whatever it is that you're growing, and you're going to eventually sprout those wings, right? But you don't know really when it is. And so if it happens that each time you try and you find that the wings aren't there yet, the message can be, just don't get too discouraged, because it does take sometimes several of these molting cycles. But realize that the molt is happening, the shedding of the skin is happening so that the caterpillar can get larger, to enable the growth. Okay, so if you've just been through one or more of these disappointments, or just like you've been growing and all of a sudden you realize it's, oh, okay, that was another crash and burn, but just take a look at how much bigger you have grown, okay? Have you've grown because of it. All invariably, when we have these crash and burn times and these cycles of ascension and then crashing, each time we come out of it bigger, spiritually bigger. And if you look back over time, you'll see the progression, how much bigger you've become. And in fact, the whole butterfly transformation, a big part of that meaning is, the indication that this transformation does take place over time. It takes time. There's nobody, not even Jesus or Buddha, they had journeys that they took, right? I mean, look at the Buddha and his progression from the spoiled prince to the enlightened Buddha. He went through all these stages, and a lot of them were not easy, right? And but at each stage he got more and more and more awakened and enlightened, till finally he just kind of reached the butterfly stage, right? Or the fat happy Buddha stage. So that's there. All right, so looking a little bit more at the caterpillar. Caterpillar is a ground creature, right? Well, it's on the plants. It lives on the plants, but it's definitely earthbound, very much so. But if you look real closely at the caterpillar, it's got two kinds of legs. So legs are how you move along the ground. It'll have 6 true legs, and then it will have a number of what are called pseudopods, or false feet. And you can tell the difference because the true legs look like these sharp little things, like little claws, and then the pseudopods look like these kind of round, almost suction cup things. And they help them, to move around on the plants and to climb and so forth. But looking at that, there are behaviors and ways that we cope, ways that we adapt, that we have, that we start out in life with, or on our spiritual journey. And a lot of times these are coping mechanisms that we developed in order to deal with difficulties as best we could at the time. And okay, so we all have the abilities and the ways to cope that are really going to stay with us throughout this whole thing and be with us even as we become awakened beings. But we all have these things that we've developed as a result of being on Earth and having to deal with Earth, Earth reality on this plane. And we come up with behaviors and stuff. And a lot of them, sometimes they are not conducive to awakening. They're not going to help us to become the people that they become less than helpful because we've outgrown them. So as the caterpillar shifts and enters that chrysalis stage, they will eventually lose those pseudopods because they're no longer needed. So recognize that you're going to have behavior patterns and things like that are going to need to be discarded or shed. Okay, and there's that whole idea of destruction in order to create. So with that in mind, moving into the chrysalis stage, that's basically what's happening in terms of when the caterpillar becomes, turns into that chrysalis. It's a stillness, it's a going within. And that is an absolutely necessary process for the awakening to happen, which if you're looking at butterflies come into your life, or especially if you've been noticing a lot of chrysalises or cocoons, because the moth is a very similar animal, it may be some time. You may have to just want to take some time and really get still. We all have these busy lives, and our culture encourages us to be busy, 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 busy all the time. But it is really, really difficult. Growth happens as a result not just of activity, but also of rest. And there's a reason we spend 8 hours every day asleep. It's almost like this daily chrysalis stage, right? And there are seasons where in a more natural state, we would probably spend much of the winter in a less active state of being. It's dark more often, and it's a signal to our physical bodies to slow down. So nature gives us these cycles of slowing down, and what it does is it feeds us or helps us to develop, or there's a lot of development that goes through. It happens when we're still. And it seems, again, it's just like the egg. It seems like there's not much happening. But in reality, that's where a huge amount of development and growth occurs, is during these times of stillness. So really, really important is to take the time to go within and become still. Meditation, yoga, making sure you get enough sleep. That's a major, major thing, making sure you get enough sleep. Because lack of sleep will throw you off like nothing else. And it's just like our physical bodies need sleep, and especially when there's changes happening with your psyche, or any kinds of changes. If you've got like a lot of physical stress or whatever it is, you're going to need more rest, more sleep, and just stillness, meditation. Honestly, just learning to quiet the mind and come to that place of stillness. Big, big, big lesson for butterfly, because it's not, you're not going to see the transformation you want without it. And also to recognize that when this creature, the butterfly, the caterpillar, enters into the chrysalis stage, there's a lot of dissolution going on, meaning it's just kind of breaking up. And there may be a time in your life where everything just seems to fall apart. Just everything. And the antidote to that is, as much as you can, just come into stillness and recognize that, it's going to come back together, and it'll probably come back together in a completely different way. And that's what's happening inside the chrysalis. Just everything is broken apart. It's kind of turning into goo, and it just reassembles into this butterfly. All right. So after the chrysalis has sat there for a while, it will eventually be time for the butterfly to come out. And that's actually a very beautiful process. It just kind of makes its way out of the chrysalis. And then there's this period of time where its wings begin to unfold, and they're kind of wet and all crumpled in there, right? They've got to actually expand. After it comes out, there's a period of time where it can't just fly right away. It's got to sit there. It's got to let the blood come into the veins in its wings. It's got to let its wings dry, let its wings expand. And it's a vulnerable time because it can't fly. It's just sitting there. But it's really, really necessary. It's got to get its bearings. It's got to allow itself to become ready to fly. So again, it's an encouragement to allow time to take its course. Don't try to force, because if you try to force at this stage, or if you try to force at any stage, it just slows the growth, it slows it. All right, so allowing things to happen, to unfold in their perfect timing, recognizing that it is unfolding, that the unfolding is happening, that the transformation is happening, and that it's happening beautifully, it's happening perfectly the way it's meant to happen, without being forced. And it's actually going to be a faster transition without trying to force it than it would be if you're like impatient to like, oh, I gotta fly, right? So trust that the flight is, it's there, it's going to happen. And so finally, once that whole process of expanding the wings is done, then the butterfly is ready to fly. And again, we can look at, if you're seeing a lot of butterflies, notice, what kind of butterfly it is. There may be all sorts of different kind of butterflies, in which case you're probably dealing with a general butterfly totem. Or you might be seeing particular types of butterflies. I wrote a blog post a couple years ago about tiger swallowtail butterflies. It's on my blog at brightspiritrising.com. And each butterfly, each species has specific meanings, so you can look into that. The colors, look at the colors of your butterfly, look into the behavior patterns, specific behaviors of your butterfly, and those will give you clues as to what it might be wanting to say, if it's a particular species. One thing that I do want to mention about butterflies is that they have just a huge amount of visual capacity to see color. So butterflies can see the widest spectrum of light of any animal, and that includes UV light and polarized light. They're just really amazing, vision animals. So if we're looking at corresponding chakras, we're looking at third eye ability, to see beyond. Again, that happens as we become more aware and awake and enlightened. Our sixth sense opens up, and we can start seeing angels or whatever it is, having these intuitive capacities. So another meaning of butterfly. The common bluebottle is an Australian butterfly. It was found to have no less than 15 photoreceptors. These are light detecting cells responsible for human vision. And just to kind of show you how amazing that is, humans have just 3 and most butterflies have 4. This butterfly has 15. So just an indicator of how receptive butterflies are to light. So there's no wonder that they're associated with enlightenment. Shadow side of butterfly. I think we already kind of went into the caterpillar end of things, greed, that kind of thing, insatiable desire. And some of these things are things that we need to just like move through. I think in our society, we are definitely starting, hopefully, to move out of this insatiable desire, greed stage. If you grew up during the 1980s, remember the shopping mall phenomenon, where that was the thing to do. And I think, we still have some of that, but it feels like it's starting to lessen, thank goodness. But that is part of this whole, process that may be a stage that a lot of people go through, is this insatiable desire for whatever it is, whether it's material things or sex or whatever. And sometimes it's an insatiable desire for spiritual stuff, right? We can go overboard on anything. So kind of be aware of that. And then the butterfly itself, a shadow side of the butterfly is, it's flighty, right? Okay. And this isn't necessarily bad. There's the whole social butterfly phenomenon, or connotation. But sometimes it can be just sort of like flitting from here to there and not really able to settle on anything long enough to really do much. So just this idea of being not well grounded, I guess. And definitely there's, for spiritual people, myself included, that can be a real challenge, is the grounding aspect, because we can get so into our angels and our experiences and our spiritual stuff, the awakening, which is wonderful, and it's amazing, and it's joyful, and it feels great when we're up there, when we're connecting with angels and all this stuff. But we can just get lost up there and not be able to come back to ground, and remember that this whole transformation process for butterfly is part of the life cycle. So it's not a linear thing. It's a circular thing, right? It comes around. Because what would happen if every butterfly just went from egg to adult, and then the cycle didn't continue? Well, it just ends, right? So just a reminder that even if you have achieved, an awakened state, there are always more levels. So you may find that you move through, and there may be a reiteration of this whole process, from egg to, you may just be at the beginning of another cycle, and again, it's bringing us ever higher. And then the other aspect of that is that butterfly is this creature that has both aspects of earth and air, and that the job of the adult butterfly is to begin the cycle anew and to lay eggs. Okay, what's an egg? It's the animal equivalent to a seed. And as we awaken, we have seeds of wisdom that we've got things to bring to the world. We've got gifts to give out. And when we're not grounded, if we don't come down to ground and ground ourselves, it is really, really, really hard. A butterfly cannot lay eggs, meaning distribute its gifts, right? If it's flitting around in the air all the time, if it doesn't come and land. All right, so butterfly, just an indication that, part of the whole process is we've got to ground ourselves enough that we can actually manifest this beauty that we have discovered onto the earth, right? Give our gifts, whatever it is, if we're teaching, we're spreading seeds of, enlightenment around for other people to help them to grow and to sprout their own wings and so forth. But you gotta ground yourself. So I hope this has been helpful. A lot more that I could say about butterfly, and maybe probably will in the future say more about butterfly. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this, check out my blog. It's brightspiritrising.com. At this time, I do have a Meet Your Spirit Animal meditation on there that you can download for free. I'm not sure that'll be... I'll probably leave it up there, but anyway, I'm going to have some changes in my blog pretty soon, but I do have information on spirit animals as well as other things of interest to awakening people. So check it out, brightspiritrising.com. And if you enjoyed this, then please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And comment below. Would love to hear from you, and I will do my best to reply if you have questions below. So you have a lovely day and enjoy your butterflies.